Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Ralph's
whoa, whoa,
house. Ralph's house. Ralph is in the house. He says, sir, 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 I'm desperately trying to learn that little dance you do to impress the ladies. Can you demonstrate that slowly?
I think he's talking about the YMCA. I finish all of my rallies with YMCA unless he's talking about the Macho Man. The Macho Man. So this is how I do the Macho Man. So if you're a white guy, you go like this. Or you do this. Or you do music. Hold on, I had to take a water break. Hold on, I'm going to come back to our male reporter in a second. Hold on.
Well, it's not that often I do videos from my bed, but I am at the moment, and I'll explain why. I've got this launch code scanner for cars. It's actually the 123X. It is pretty good. It's quite comprehensive. A lot of vehicles in it. And I bought it because I've always driven not so much classic cars, but old school, certainly. I've got a VW T25 out of the back, which I haven't done anything with it for 4 years, but I will. Because my son's taking it on after me. So, hopefully with the warm summer this year, I can get out with my MIG welder and do various bits and pieces. 1 or 2 panels I want to replace on it. Anyway, that's by the by. I do have a Honda Civic, a 2006, which I love. It's a very quick car. It's got the VTEC engine in it. I have to say, I don't hammer it. I did try it once in VTEC mode. Scared the hell out of me, and I thought, when am I ever going to need that kind of power? So I didn't use it again. I just potter around in it, and it's pretty economical. And I drove down to Essex, down to Clacton and Harwich and Colchester, and without a hitch. And actually the reason I bought that Civic was so I could go down to Clacton, but my requirement for driving down to Clacton just fell by the by. I didn't need to, but I thought last November, I thought I'll go back, because although I live in the Midlands and have a fairly strong Midlands accent, you will detect a slight Essex twang mixed in. And that's because although I was brought up in the Midlands and born here, I spent over 25 years living in Essex, and just as many years when I moved back. So I'm a bit of a half-breed, I suppose. Anyway, I got this Civic and I've had no trouble with it, except last week I did a bit of late night shopping. I quite like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I like going to Lidl because it's on the opposite side of Coventry. But I like the fact that when I go on a Tuesday night about 8 o'clock, the store's empty. You know what I mean? You're unstressed. I don't feel like I'm fighting somebody over a pork chop. So, anyway, got the shopping, got back, pulled up. Couldn't park outside my house in my usual spot. No problem. Park across the road. We're all pretty, laid back neighbours. We're all right like that. And went out in the morning, green key flashing on the dashboard. I can open the car doors with the fob. I can put my key in the dash. I can turn it so all the ignition lights come on. And it will let me crank it. I can press the start button. Will it fire? No, because the immobiliser's kicked in. It now says, no, you're not the owner. So I've been having to go into work. I work in maintenance. I've done lots of things in my life, but this suits me, principally because I haven't got to think. But it's meant I've had to go into work on the bus. And it's a bit of a nightmare with modern cars, isn't it, in immobilisers, because, and I think more so with Hondas, because the immobiliser is so tied into the ECU. And from what I can see, the ECU, I think the ECU doesn't quite recognise the immobiliser. It's an immobiliser ring that sits around your key. So your key's got a small chip in it, and when you put your key in the lock, it recognises it and goes, oh, I know that key. Yes, you can start. For some reason, it's not. So whether the immobiliser has lost contact with the keys, or the ECU doesn't quite recognise the immobiliser, I think probably more likely. I don't know. But this thing's been pretty good. And for an extra, I think it was 24 quid, you could buy a year's worth of extra functions for the Honda, which hopefully I'll try in a day or two. My neighbour, he's a lovely man, Phil. Well, they both are. They're adorable, really. All my neighbours are. I'm very fortunate. We always worry if somebody dies or moves out, because, of course, the whole dynamic of the street is going to change. You know, we like what we've got, don't we, neighbours? Anyway, Phil very kindly, because I was kind of waiting for payday, said, look, why don't you just take it down to Honda? I'll pay for it, and then you just pay me back, you know, as your money comes in. And I said, well, it's very kind of him, incredibly generous, the sort of thing my dad would have done. But I said, no, I won't do that, because I know I'm going to get fleeced by Honda. And, you know, I'm not knocking them, but they are expensive. And my Honda is tidy as it is, and it goes well. It is 16 years old. So whatever the bill's going to be from Honda, it's probably more than the value of the car, isn't it? You know, I can see it easily being 600 quid. And you don't know when you get in there. They'll probably say, oh, you need a new EC. I know, I've been down this road. I've been a mechanic all my life. So I've heard all this kind of stuff. So I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I've downloaded the extra package on this, but at the same time, I've ordered what appears to be one of the cheapest code scanners on the market that apparently will reset my ECU and my keys. It'll do the whole lot. So I've done the extra module on this. I'm going to try that, because that may well do it. But I've also got this extra one if I want it. And I think for what I paid for it, I think it was 60 quid. That's going to be cheaper than going to Honda, isn't it? And I can add as many keys as I like. So that's kind of where I'm at this week. And I'm not stressing about it. I don't mind going in on the bus. It's not bad, you know. I can talk to all the other pensioners on the way. And all the school kids on the way back, because that's how it tends to be that kind of day. And I've changed my hours at work, principally because when I was going on the bus, when I finished work, I had to wait a whole hour for my bus to come. So I thought, this is stupid. So I altered my hours a bit, came in half an hour earlier, and now it's perfectly timed. Within 5 minutes, me leaving, my bus is there to take me home. So not a big inconvenience, really. Having to use the bus. I don't mind it. It's all right. It actually works out £1 cheaper than me driving in, because it's £4 on the bus. It's £4 to park my car in the car park, and I perhaps use £1 worth of fuel going there and back. So I'm actually saving money by going in on the bus. But I was just sat here going through the menus and trying to work out how now I've bought the extra features for this thing, and it's a great scanner, it really is. How I actually get into them, I think I've finally figured that out. So I shall have this other scanner in the week. And a bit of, just before we move on to something else and away from my bed, I was watching Radio Cruncher on YouTube. Graham, he lives down in Devon, I think, and does a live stream usually every week, repairing some kind of radio or something like that. It's always good to watch because there's a bunch of us. He's got a little chat thing and we all chat together. And but I was thinking about people who use YouTube, certainly not Graham, but lots of people I see when they're trying to demonstrate something, they say something like, here we have our scanner and our on and off button. What's this our business? When did it suddenly belong to somebody else? This is my scanner. If you bought your own one, well, that would be your scanner, wouldn't it? There's no our. I don't know where that's come about. Anyway, we'll move on to something else. While I've got 5 minutes of peace and quiet, which is not always the way in my house, my son calls me the Swiss Army knife, which is a good description because I do so many different things, to be honest. But and if you watch Ralph's House channel, you'll know this. But earlier in the year, I was working on the Genko Archer, or Genko Archer, pinball, 1938. I'm trying to remember it now. But it's a flipperless pinball. It's one of the early ones. Sort of thing you'd have found in Al Capone's club. That's how far back it goes. Anyway, it is very manual pinball. And what I wanted to do was introduce some modernity to it without actually destroying it or damage it in any way. In other words, so you can put it in or you could take it out. And I was thinking of this. I've bought a few MP3 modules. These are great, you know, because you just put in a, well, usually a USB, something like that. But this one just takes a memory card and you load it up with MP3s. And you'll notice down here, it's got all these pins down this side here. And when you short one of these out, it will play a specific MP3 file off that. So I was looking at it, and because a lot of people use them with Arduinos, things like that. But I thought, this will play, because I can load them up with the sound of chimes on a pinball, whatever sort of sound you want, triggered by micro switches under the playfield. That's what I was thinking. And I've got to read it up because it's got a bit of a strange name, but it's a DYSV5W. So it's a DY-SV5W MP3 player module. I call it a trigger board. A lot of people use these in props, that sort of stuff, but certainly very useful in the arcade world, and only requires 5 volt, and for the low levels of volume required you need a very, very small speaker. So I thought I would play about with that, but I just thought I'd show you. Anyway, I bought 3. I didn't want to go mad with it, but I bought one. I thought I'll test it on the bench, and hopefully later on in this video you can have a look and see how the whole thing works. Well, what I would say is, you remember I was talking, sat in my bed with the launch scanner, which is very good. I've got this green key that keeps coming up on my dash, you see, which says that the immobiliser's on. In other words, sorry mate, that might be your key, but I don't recognise you, so I'm not going to start. What it basically does is disconnect the fuel pump, and you ain't going to bypass it. And the problem with it is, it could be the ECU, this is a European UK Civic, by the way. The fuse box is under there or under there, I forget which one. But the ECU, they don't call it that Honda, do they? They call it MICU or something like that, is sat behind the fuse box. And the immobiliser, which is this thing, well, it's the key detector, to be honest. It's a combination of that and the ECU, so that, you know, the immobiliser either works or it doesn't. But bizarrely, right, and it'd be worth it to anybody else who's got a Honda Civic. This is a 2006 model, and the immobiliser comes on and you're stuck. What you want is that little thing. Thinkdiag Mini. Varies between 60 and 70 quid. I got this one for 60. Anyway, plugged it in. No problem whatsoever. It didn't actually necessarily throw up the problem, but I knew what the problem was. So reset the ECU, or the MICU, or IMOs, I think it's called. And it went right, registered. Then I went into a immobiliser setup and go through the process of adding the keys. And if you do that, the green light goes away. And I shall just prove that point. It's no key. Okay, we'll finish off Ralph's house this week with this board that I showed you earlier on. I finally got it connected up. For anybody else who buys this board, that USB socket on the board does not supply the 5 volt needed to run this. You have to bring it in here. What I did, I've got a USB lead and just cut it down. This one, luckily enough, has only got power in it, so that was good. If it had data, it would have another 2 cables in it. But positive that side, negative that side. But basically, there's an earth point here where my crock clip is. I've made up this test lead, and if you imagine you used a micro switch for this, if you just touch one, that's quite loud, isn't it? Loud enough for a pinball. Slightly different one for number 2 and number 3 and number 4, being as it's a Genko Archer. That would be a bit of fun, especially every time you deliver the ball. Yeah, and it's not going to intrude on the game really in any way. I shall make sure of that. But it just adds a little bit of interactivity, or modernity, as I described it earlier on, to some old pinball. You know, for kids of today, they expect a lot more of these things, don't they? But no sweat at all adding these. These are great little balls, about 40 centimetres by 40 centimetres. I know a lot of people hook them up to Arduinos because there's a high and low terminal down here, which will mean nothing to anybody else. Yeah, but that's what you can do. But I've got this cranked up full, and I have to say it's very loud. There you go. Thanks for watching Ralph's House.
Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.